Hello, my name is Diane, and today I want to talk about Le Fay by Sophie Keetch. This is the sequel to Morgan is My Name and the second book in the Morgan Le Fay trilogy. This series is an Arthurian retelling centering around the life of Morgan Le Fay, beginning when she is a young girl and progressing through the years of her life. If you're not familiar with the first book, we begin when Morgan is young and Uther Pendragon first enters her life. With the help of the sorcerer Merlin, he murders her father, marries her mother, and becomes her stepfather. And from there, we see her adjusting to this awful thing that has happened, eventually finding her first love, getting sent away to a convent, banished from her home, and then following the years after that until she is an adult. Throughout all of this, we see that Morgan is very passionate about learning. She loves reading. She's very eager for knowledge, but as a girl in her ranking, she's not really supposed to be pursuing those things. She has a role to play in Uther Pendragon's grand scheme of whatever he's trying to do, and she is not a willing participant in that. She really just wants to have the freedom to pursue more knowledge. She becomes very interested in healing, and while she oftentimes has to keep herself in check, she is a very passionate, very driven character with a bit of a temper. She's not interested in just backing down and living the life that she is told she's supposed to live. She really wants to live her way and practice healing and gain knowledge, and in trying to do that, she discovers that she has a natural talent for magic. So we see that throughout the years, her discovering that she has these abilities, her trying to live within the bounds that she's been given, within whatever limitations and expectations Uther Pendragon sets for her, while still doing as much as she is able to continue gaining knowledge and helping people and doing the things that she actually cares about. And this story is definitely Morgan's story. We're seeing the story through her eyes. We experience things alongside her. We only know as much as she knows. So while we do have a lot of these other familiar Arthurian characters that typically would take center stage in retellings, like Arthur and Merlin, and they do play significant roles within her life, they are certainly side characters. We don't know a whole lot of what's going on with them, what their motivations are, other than what they express to Morgan, what they're doing, unless Morgan is around to witness it, or at least to hear about it secondhand from another character. I think that makes this a more interesting retelling, in that we're focusing around a character that already exists, whose main points in her life are already mostly predetermined. There are different variations of Arthurian legend and the specific details within it, but for the most part, Sophie Keetch stays pretty true to the Arthurian tale and the things that you may already know about Morgan's life, but I think all the details and the motivations behind the character that she brings to the story are what really make it immersive and engrossing. I was definitely drawn into the story. I really liked this character. I was definitely rooting for her. But I will say that if you're a plot-driven reader, this might not appeal to you quite as much, because it is very character-centered. It is just about Morgan's life. It's not about one particular thing in her life. We go through quite a few changes with her as we've covered a lot of time throughout the story. But I do think it is a very well-written and engaging story. In the second book specifically, we pick up from the time that Morgan returns as an adult, now with a son, to Camelot, and she is living in King Arthur's court. Arthur has taken the throne at this point and taken his sister in. They are very close. They definitely adore one another and have a very tight sibling bond. She is a devoted mother to her young son, and she does not like her husband, who she now fears is going to one day take her son away from her, because he has the power to do that at any moment. As the mother, she really doesn't have any rights to deciding what happens with her son. And while she has such a close bond with her brother and some of her close friends that are with her, she also doesn't get along with everyone at court. She is still a very strong-willed, independent character, and sometimes that does not always work in her favor, as there are always going to be people around her judging her actions. And I like that I'm still rooting for Morgan throughout the second book, but she does make some mistakes. She does act on her temper sometimes and say things when she maybe shouldn't. She is still a little bit defiant at her core, and I like that she at least has some perspective on that. She is aware that she is this way, that she sometimes shouldn't say the things that she says. She sometimes does things because her emotions get the better of her and regrets them later, and I like that she has some perspective on her personality and her own faults and doesn't just stick to her guns and say, no, I was right the whole time. She has the ability to sometimes blame herself for things that have happened, that maybe if she had done something differently, if she had said something or hadn't said something, things would turn out differently. Her life is certainly a roller coaster. She does get some good moments, she does have some wins, but she also has a lot of obstacles in her way as she's just trying to live a peaceful, independent life. I feel like is still her main goal of things. She just wants to be happy and live the way she wants to live, but because of her station, because of her relationships and role within the world, that's not so simple as she would like to think it is. And there are always things happening that are keeping her from that goal. As I had said, the story is very centered on Morgan, and it's not really a complaint, but the only thing that I found myself wanting while reading this book was sometimes the side characters don't feel super developed, in that we don't really always know what their motivations are, what they're doing when Morgan's not around them. So I'm sometimes wondering, what's this person doing? Why did they do that? Why did they say that? What are they trying to get out of Morgan here? But I mean, the point is we don't know that because Morgan doesn't know that. And I say it's not really a complaint because I feel like if that change were to be made, if we did know what all of these other characters were doing, this would be a very different story. And I really like this story, so I wouldn't actually want that to change. It's just something I'm wondering as I'm reading. But I guess it would also be something that Morgan's probably wondering as she's living through this. Why did they do that? Why did they say that? What's actually going on here? Can I trust this person or not? That type of thing. And I think we get a good balance of being in Morgan's head and understanding her thoughts and emotions without being too far in her head where she's just hashing out all of her thoughts or all of her actions. We don't get an excessive amount of detail, which I appreciate. I think that can sometimes bog a story down if it's told in the first person. I feel like we get just enough of her inner thoughts and actions to cover as much time and ground as we do in this story while still being very immersive and engaging. I definitely felt invested in Morgan the entire time. In this book, we also get a lot more magic than in the first book. In the first book, we discover Morgan's ability to do magic and figuring out how to do certain things. But in this one, she really devotes the time and energy to learning magic. She learns a better source for her magic, a better way to fuel her magic. This is not really a broken down magic system where we know all of the rules and limitations. It is explained in a way that feels like it makes sense in the way that she powers her magic and what she learns she is able to do. And we definitely do see her advance and develop her abilities to heal and just to do nature-based magic. The series does also feature a fair amount of romance, which typically I'm not a romance reader. It's not something that really appeals to me in books. It's definitely not something I'm drawn towards as a selling point for a book. But I found that I really liked the romance within this story. I felt like it progressed in a believable way. I found myself rooting for the romance and also Nothing steamy happens on page, which I also appreciate. That's not something that I enjoy reading. That is, of course, personal taste. This definitely has a romance that I felt like I could be rooting for, that I was excited to see what happened with it because it's has its difficulties as well, but also we don't need all the details of the romance, or I don't need all the details of the romance. So I liked the way that it was written. This is just a book that I felt like I didn't always want to pick it up. This took me a lot longer to read than I expected it to, and normally that's because I'm not enjoying a book, so I don't want to pick it up. But with this book, I didn't want to pick it up because I didn't want it to end, especially when I reached one point in the story where it felt like things were going so well for Morgan, and I knew that something bad surely was going to happen in her life, and I didn't want it to. I just wanted to let her be happy for a little while. And I also didn't want to be done with the story because I just was enjoying reading it so much I didn't really want to reach the end. However, anytime I did pick it up, I really had a hard time putting it back down because I found it so engaging, because I was so eager to see what happened next. And that's what kept me picking it up. I didn't want it to be over, but I really wanted to know what happened. And now that I've reached the end of this book, I really want to know what happens in the third book. I'm really excited and a little bit nervous to see where Morgan's life goes, what specific turn it's going to take. There's a few things I'm worried about that are surely going to happen because it's an Arthurian retelling, but there are also some things that I really hope are going to happen. I'm hoping Morgan gets a good ending, but I'm also very nervous for her because she had such a roller coaster of a life. If you read this or you're planning to read it, definitely let me know what you think about it. I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, I definitely recommend this book. I'm very much enjoying this series. I love the writing. I think the story is very interesting and compelling. That's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.